Hi there, everyone. Right, it's noon in the UK, so this is the scheduled time to start the webinar, and as we like to do, we'll start it bang on time. So thank you, everybody, for joining this latest in our Turnkey webinar series. And we've got a few gems to talk you through today. The first of which is that I'm Simon Persin, and I'm not delivering the webinar. I'm just hosting today. So the aim for me is to not talk very much. The second gem is that we're delighted to welcome Paul Lloyd-Smith from SAP and Tom Smith, a managing consultant from Turnkey, to actually talk us through the webinar today. So hopefully you're in the right place, but this webinar is specifically focused on the cyber threats and how to minimize those for SAP applications and what customers are really doing about that particular topic. Something that's been growing throughout the market, and our appreciation of this topic has been maturing, as you would expect, but yeah, we're looking forward to this particular one. And the third gem that we're going to be presenting is hopefully an online demo. So pin your ears back, have a listen to this, and we'll get started. So as I mentioned today, I'm Simon Persin, I'm your host, but I'm delighted to introduce Tom Smith and Paul Lloyd-Smith as well. So all the Smiths from the party there, and we're going to take you through a little bit of an overview, a bit of a discussion earlier on about what we've seen from the market, what Paul has seen from his exposure to the market as well from the SAP perspective, then walking through what some of the SAP technology is to support that from an enterprise threat and detection perspective there, and then Tom is going to walk us through a bit of a demo. As with always on these sorts of things, if you have any questions throughout, we'd be delighted to hear from you. Please use the question box within the GoToWebinar application there, and that will come straight through to me so that we can have a bit of a Q&A afterwards as well. So I'm not going to unmute all of you guys on the webinar so that you could derail the massive presentations that we've got here, but please use that question box and we'll try to pick up those towards the end of the webinar. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to hand over on to Paul Lloyd-Smith, who's going to entertain you for the next 25 or so minutes.
Try to, Simon. But firstly, thank you very much indeed for inviting me in today to assist you with this webinar. Really pleased we can collaborate on this session. And hello to everybody online. Good afternoon. So, I mean, first of all, to kick off the session today, we're going to start off by just asking some questions of you, Tom, if that's okay. I mean, you know, obviously I meet with customers all the time. I know you do. What are the general topics that are really being raised in your customer meetings around cybersecurity?
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so a lot of the time we're having conversations pre-meeting and during meeting, and obviously the newsworthy events are the ones that get the biggest talking points. So we've got all the phishing attacks that are ongoing, ransomware, so it's the NHS attack last year, and also malware attacks that get into the systems. They're the only ones that get into the news. The amount of money that's associated with these is often in the tens or hundreds of millions, so that's always a big talking point. In addition to that, with a lot of clients have got internal and external audit issues as well, and we have to focus on the regulatory impact of these cyber attacks. So especially with GDPR at the moment, organizations need to know what data they have, how to classify it, and how to keep it secure, and without that, we're at risk of huge fines from the European Union. Or the regulators, not the European Union directly. And then finally, we've got the risk from internal threats as well. So organizations know that, and they have done for a while, that they need to secure the network so that intruders don't get in. However, when someone's already in the organization, it's how do you monitor that threat? So if it's not a disgruntled employee, it's the risk of a third party. And as we've seen in some organizations recently with Wipro, where third parties managed to access the client system and download data from their position of power almost.
Absolutely, yeah. It's very similar with what I'm seeing as well, Tom, and I think, you know, GDPR as well, as you've mentioned, that's really, it's almost like in a second wind at the moment. The organisations are revisiting that now and understanding what they need to do to adhere to that regulation, especially. So, as well as the general, you know, cybersecurity threats they're experiencing all the time. So what are companies in your experience currently doing to mitigate cybersecurity risk?
So there are a suite of things that people are using at the moment, or in organisations. So what we're seeing is a lot of security incident and event monitoring tools, so SIM tools there, such as QRadar. And what these do, they monitor at the network level. They can detect whether there's intrusions, whether there's been breaches of the firewall, etc. But what tools like this don't offer is the context. So they can give you a binary yes or no. They can say your network's been attacked or it hasn't. There's been access to certain sectors. So what you really need is the who, what, where, and when in order to be able to rally the troops and give an effective response before it's too late. In addition to that, there are organizations who are using monthly pen tests, monthly application security tests, but like they are point in time, they're not real time. So if something happened 3 weeks ago and you find out today, you've got a lot of working back to do to find out exactly what the problem is and how to secure it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So in terms of that, how would you say that, from your experience of the solutions that are on the market as well as the SAP solutions, how do the SAP solutions really differentiate or really deliver opportunities for better cyber awareness?
Okay, so SAP has a suite of governance, risk and compliance tools. So we have the access control, which is for monitoring and maintaining access to keep your system secure. You have process controls, which is essentially the brainchild of your control framework. So you can in there have all your controls listed and whether they're failing or hopefully not, and any instance you have there, so that you can effectively report and remediate any risks. And finally, you have the risk management module as well, which is more holistic, allows you to look at the business risks faced externally and internally. These are all focused really on at the application level. While they do have some ability to monitor or discuss points that are at the network level, they don't cover that area. What we're here to talk about today, and hopefully give you more insight into, and what everyone's here for, hopefully, is SAP Enterprise Threat Detection, which essentially bridges that gap that we've seen between the SIM tools and the network level and the application level controls and monitoring. So using, not to sound too much like an SAP salesman, the power of leveraging the power of HANA database, it's able to do the heavy lifting and perform very complex analysis over logs from your SAP systems and non-SAP systems in order to identify threats in real time, alert people to those threats with the context that you require. So as an SAP tool built for SAP, it can give you the who, the where, the what, and the when, so you can effectively respond to the threat and limit the damage to your systems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really is the key differentiator, is that real-time perspective of the solution. And you're going to show us a demonstration of that solution today, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Brilliant. That's great.
So here's a few of the talking points that we'll show on the demo now. Rather than reading out what it can do, I'll show you what it can do on screen.
That's great.
So for those people that haven't seen the Fury GUI before, this is what it looks like. This is the new SAP front end for SAP applications running on HANA. As you can see, it's a bit nicer to look at and a bit more intuitive than your SAP GUI or NetWeaver Business Client. And the feedback so far is that it's much easier to use. You've obviously got this dashboard that you have on your laptop, but you have the same or similar on your mobile phone or mobile device. So what I'll do, I'll go on a whistle-stop tour of everything that's in the ETD dashboard, and then I'll go through a worked example with you and how we look at alerts and how we investigate them. So this section here is the analysis and pattern design section. So this is what we look at. This is the brainchild really of ETD. What we have here is the forensic lab. This is where we build patterns, which are essentially our detected controls. We'd run on all systems, so our SAP and non-SAP systems. It does come with SAP's own built patterns that they've devised through DSUG user groups and other security nodes. So out of the box, you could plug and play if you needed to. And what we'll show you in our example is that it's not coding. You don't need to be an ABAPer to be able to build a pattern. It's fairly intuitive after a few attempts. Next, we have the monitoring section. So we have system monitoring here, which helps you assess that all your applications in your landscape, or if you've got 20 plus SAP landscapes and non-SAP landscapes, that you are actually getting data from all those. As soon as maybe there's an hour gone, if you lose an hour of log data, then effectively you cannot cannot retrospectively review the logs from there. And also it has a monitoring dashboard which a security analyst or security manager can look at just to get a holistic view of the whole network and ensure that everything's working as expected. Now, this section, the alerts and investigations, is the most important section. This is where the bread and butter of what your security analyst will be looking at every day. So this shows you the open alerts that you have. There's not too many. This is our sandbox environment, but it shows you it by ranking within the last day or all time, and it shows you which systems they're coming from. So in addition to that, we have the log events, which essentially takes all the logs from the HANA database that you have with your millions and millions of lines, but it puts it in a nice readable format that you can filter on if you want to further investigate anything. Next, we have a log learning section. So as we mentioned earlier, SAP ETD can ingest logs from non-SAP systems. So here what you do, if HANA sees some logs it doesn't recognize, it wouldn't just dismiss them and say this is an error, it would put them in the unrecognized log section. And there you can link the attributes from the non-SAP logs to your SAP attributes, such as if you had date in one system but SAP said it's timestamp, you can link the two of them and then run effective pattern analysis over time on those new logs.
So ETD supports the analysis of non-SAP systems as well as SAP systems?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the purpose of this. So we have Sherlock there, which I think is a play on Sherlock, which allows you to take in those non-SAP logs. And I think, although at the beginning, with like anything, it would be effort, but once you've done that once, you don't have to do it again.
Right. Okay.
Administration, which is your general settings within ETD, so setting up new locations or subnets. And then finally, the advanced analysis. So what ETD offers is user pseudonymization, which Simon gives me the thumbs up that I said correctly. In ETD, for any user IDs, it hashes the value of that ID, so that when you've got an initial analysis, you may have a pattern exception. You may not want your security analyst seeing who that user ID is. They can still build up a picture of what's been performed using this hash value, but without knowing the individual's identity. Okay. What you can do here is resolve that identity if you're a security manager or higher up and take a look at actually who that user ID is when you're performing investigations. So what I will do now, I'll take you back up to the patterns list. I'll just give you a quick example. So what this shows is the name of the pattern, the namespace, which is essentially where you've built it, the description, any open alerts related to that, who it was created by, and any exceptions. So what we have is both alerts and indicators. An alert is something you want raised straight away, so on its own is an incident. An indicator, not necessarily on its own commits to something, but if you have 1,000 in a day of these indicators, you might want an alert raised. And as you can see, there's a number of different patterns in here. So we have them covering your general SAP security. You have them covering from a network perspective, so HTTP URL paths. There's one down here around denial of service attacks. And also you have data related ones. So data downloaded by system ID. So the example we gave earlier with the third parties, there's already a pattern here built by SAP to look into.
So the solution comes with patterns predefined as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And SAP are consistently working on new ones based on feedback from users.
Great.
So I'll take you into an example, just hopefully this won't scare anyone. It'll just show you that it's not coding required to be able to build one of these. It's more a case of it's understanding what you're actually trying to look for and how you want to review the results. So at first it may seem like a lot of noise here. So what we're looking at is this section here where the paths are. So as you can see, this is called user created and log on. So what we're looking to investigate with this pattern that we built is if a new user is created and then subsequently that user is logged into from the same network host or laptop that was used to create that user, suggesting you've circumvented a joiners movers leaders process, or someone's accessed the network, tried to elevate privileges. So what it shows is we use a timestamp, so last year, and then we say what was the semantic event. We said there's been a user created in this last year. And then the second path says, has there been any user logons in the last year? If so, was that user the same user who was created in path 1? And if so, was it the same laptop that was used to create that user in path 1? And this is just an introduction to show you that It's not coding required. The semantic events are already built into ETD. So if you wanted to build your own, it's relatively simple and intuitive to do compared to maybe other applications.
Yeah, sure.
So what I will do now is take you through to the alert section. And in here, we'll just look at all the alerts that we've got from a test perspective and what we do when we get an alert. So as we can see here, we have 3 alerts in here. One is there's been a user created and logged into from the same host. There's been a critical authorization assignment, so SAP all, SAP new. And as you can see here where the mouse is, hopefully it's caught up, the pseudonymized user ID. So that will remain the same throughout, but it's not the user's actual ID. And then finally, there's been a brute force attack using this laptop ID, which is my laptop ID. So we have it in list format there. What ETD also has to be able to visualize the threat is maps like this, which show the pattern, the user involved, the system, and the network host name. And it colors them by severity. So if it's high risk or very high, it's red. Medium risk is amber, and then yellow for low. So this is dynamic, so you can move it around. So if I want to look at, this system, it's got 3 pattern exceptions associated with it. So a brute force attack, a user logged into, and critical authorization assignment.
So Tom, could you just talk us through what the icons are showing there? So
Absolutely.
in terms of the icons, obviously they're different. What are they indicating?
So the icons here show either the system, which is shown by the battery, the pattern, which is shown by this hash, the network host or the laptop involved in this case, and the user. And they also have a score in there. So I'll use this as an example. It tells you the exact pattern, the namespace, how many alerts are associated, the severity of that pattern, and also the cumulative alert score. So as you can see, there's 2 laptops or 2 network hosts associated with that pattern. So it's got a higher cumulative alert score. So you could have a large one, you know exactly where to direct your attentions to.
Okay, and the size of the icons is indicating
the cumulative alert score.
Right.
So that if it's maybe a low severity, but there's been a number of different potential attacks related to that pattern, then it'll have a larger circle.
Got you. That's great, thanks.
Unfortunately, what we don't have, but I'll show you an example of, is also the system locations. Using HANA spatial maps, you're able to see globally where your threats are occurring from. So I'll just quickly go back to our PowerPoint presentation. This is an example of what it would look like. So if you're reviewing your alerts and you've got many threats in the east coast of the US, but it's only 2 a.m. there, then you know that something's wrong. And being able to visualize this and put it into reports makes obviously understanding what's going on with these systems and where attacks potentially are coming from much more simple. And like I say, I apologize, I don't have that installed just yet, but this is what it could look like if you did.
That's great to give an example of that. So I suppose in that instance, if there is somebody causing some sort of malicious activity in a network somewhere globally, you could contact a local administrator or local manager to go and actually speak to that person about what's happening. They may not be aware themselves, I suppose, either.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we've seen building up to this, we can see the alerts in list format. We can see them in that graph that we just showed the imagery. But this is a really good way just to look back and say, where's my biggest country of risk, for instance, how the control's not good enough there, is things like that. So back to enterprise threat detection. So I've identified that we have these alerts. And what we can do with these then, if I'm the security analyst or whoever's in that position, I can do one of a few things. I can analyze that alert and see who the user's involved, what was involved. I can email that out to my manager or another member of the team to have a look at. I can edit it, so maybe edit the severity of that alert based on what we know more. Add to a current investigation. As you can see there, there's 2 investigations ongoing already, so I might want to add it to this one, which is user has been created and logged into from the same terminal. Or I can start a brand new investigation using a template. So if you know that you've got certain investigations that you do fairly often, you can use that same template rather than refilling it all in, or start a freestyle one. So what I'll do here is, because we know we've got this investigation already open there, add and show the investigation. And these can be emailed, PDF'd and edited at any point. Say you have the description there, which is modifiable, the severity. So if some new information comes in, I want to change it to very high, I can do that, or I can change it to medium. Who the processor is or the owner, what the status of that investigation is. So are you waiting for new information, anything like that? And then the attack. So going back to our point earlier about binary, it's not a yes or a no because we might not have that context yet. Yeah. So we have unknown or suspected attack. And then is there management visibility required or for action or just not needed at all? And then here as well, we're able to add to a discussion and say, I've added here to investigate why users are creating new accounts outside of the process. And here you can add links, you can add images. You can see all of the alerts related to that investigation. You can see all of the attachments related to that. So if you've got an approval saying this had to be done over a weekend because we had an upgrade going on, anything like that. And this way you add those attachments. And finally, any actions performed on there, which essentially acts as a log. So if someone is performing an investigation, adds some documentation or a new alert, you want to ensure that if someone does come in and remove that, either hopefully not through malice, that's logged anyway, so you've got auditability of your ETD system. And then you can save that, and then you're able to get that in PDF format to socialize or email directly.
So is that really useful for interaction with external audit or even regulators?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Okay. Especially with the PDF, it's not been edited and you've got all that action log there.
Sure.
So people can see exactly what's been going on with your investigations. As I mentioned earlier with the log events here, this is just one final thing I'll show. These are your indicator patterns, and what you can do, you can pick certain levels and then add them directly from there, directly from your logs into your investigation. So it's very user friendly. You don't have to copy and paste anything. It knows what should be linked, and you can add that in there. So that is a quick tour of ETD's functionality at a very high level. Is there now the opening for any questions?
Fantastic, thanks, Tom. So yeah, we've had a number of different questions come through to me already. I just wanted to say before we launch into that, thank you very, very much. It's certainly really good to get an online demo that actually works from start to finish. Let's not underplay that. So very well done on that front. And it speaks volumes, Paul, to the integrity of an SAP system, that it does work and it is quite simple as well. So good work to both of you there. So yeah, a number of people are saying that it's their first interaction with ETD and seeing it actually in reality. There's been a lot of noise about it in the marketplace from customers and also from partners as well. So it's really good to be able to showcase that there's fact behind the PowerPoint slides and all the value propositions that are out there. And certainly we've seen a big step turn in the investment that SAP have put behind it as well. So it's now starting to definitely become mature as a product in its own right. But a lot of the questions that we've had, forgive me if I paraphrase a few of them together, but a lot of the questions they're having about integration scenarios for ETD. As was mentioned earlier in the webinar, the GRC portfolio is quite verbose. And so a few people have asked a similar question really about how does it integrate with the wider GRC components and in particular process control. So I wonder first off if we can go to Tom just to get your perspective on that, and then maybe Paul you can add to it if required. So over to Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. It's something we've even toyed with ourselves as we went through the installation of our own system. So process controls is essentially as I mentioned earlier, the brainchild where you'll keep your whole control framework, even manual controls and questionnaires, and ensure that you can report on there. That's your central source of truth as to how your controls are performing. What enterprise threat detection does is manages the heavy lifting, so it can perform automated control monitoring, detected control monitoring, much on a very quick scale, and be able to report that into process controls, which would be your central source of truth.
Super. Paul, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I suppose I think what we're seeing at SAP, and certainly at SAP Sapphire earlier on in May, there is a really very focused drive now to ensure that the solutions which are available to our clients are actually integrated. So what we'll see moving forward, I believe, is more integration between the solutions. But as to your point, Tom, for those organisations who have already invested in access control, process control, to be able to utilise something like enterprise threat detection, just add that extra level of real-time awareness of where there are those threats, and link that into your controls environment as well. I think that's, you know, it is really a strong message, and I think just the value there to the business, you know, is what's important.
Super, thanks guys. And a sort of similar thread really, that's the SAP badged GRC kind of products. We've had another question in there where people are starting to use some of the other maybe non-SAP badged applications, things like Next Labs and Apsys as well. So wondering on your insights really as to how those integrate and what ETD does, either complementary or overlapping with some of those products. So let's take Next Labs first. What do you think of the complementary areas or conflicting areas of how ETD works with Next Labs?
So I'll take that one. So what Next Labs offers is in terms of access control, dynamic access control. So has somebody in a certain IP address range or a certain location can't perform certain tasks in the system while they're there. Now that's great at point in time. What ETD offers is a holistic view of everything that's occurred by IP address. So if you need to look back on anything or you need to perform analysis of how that control is performing, ETD would offer that.
Super. And Apsys as well. Obviously, that's one of SAP's main sort of partners and complementary service providers, really, from an enterprise threat and external threat perspective. But how do you see that ETD kind of combines that or conflicts with it in any way?
Okay, I'll take that one as well. So when we offer an Apsys, we offer point-in-time evaluations of how you are protected from a network level and application. So what they do offer is good quality content. What ETD offers, if you've got that installed on your organization, is that in real time. So rather than finding out a few weeks later, you find out instantaneously what those risks are and what's occurred.
Yeah, I suppose certainly what we've seen from our discussions with both Apsys and the products guys within SAP for ETD is certainly the Apsys research hub and what they're doing from a general content provider perspective is pretty advanced and pretty accelerated. But what ETD provides is that kind of native SAP integration and the kind of the toolkit to be able to build it. But they're doing a similar thing, but from a slightly different perspective, really. So if you're wanting to I suppose put it directly into the context of securing your external vulnerabilities with a continual sort of research hub behind it, things like the 10K Blaze have been raised by an Apsys, for example, then that may be the way to go. But it is different alternatives and different options, really, rather than it's one size fits all. Certainly that's what we've seen out in the marketplace. So again, some other questions that are, well, sorry, Paul wanted to come in on that one as well.
No, it's just another question for you, really, Simon. Something that I get asked quite a bit from clients is around, obviously, ETD can be implemented on premise in a hybrid environment, but also some organisations that I'm talking to are asking questions around whether it's something that can be provided as a service almost. So rather than them actually implementing something on their own systems, on their own hardware, is that something that you provide as an organisation, you know, ETD as a service?
Yeah, we do. So again, we've got to walk a bit of a tightrope here as Turnkey. So obviously we offer compliance and consulting advisory services as well, largely product agnostic, but through our Bedrock managed service support offering, we've got various different solutions to that business problem. Now, whether that's an SAP based solution with ETD, yep, you can do it that way. We also have strategic links with Apsys as well. So basically, depending on customer problem and customer demand, we can service that need. So actually, that was one of the other questions that was on the that people have submitted via the webinar as to whether this is available as a service. Just scanning through to see whether there were any others. Yeah, here's one. Well, actually, we've already answered it. Is there any content available as standard within ETD? And I think, Tom, you showed that the answer was pretty much yes, but anything else to add on that one, Tom?
So no, just from my experience with our installation and what I've been demoing, is that there is a wide range of pattern analysis from SAP. Like we say, they inherently know how SAP works, so they can build patterns based upon that. And I'm assured that there's new stuff coming out or being developed all the time.
Super. Of course, we're drawing to a close, but the final question that was submitted was what's the traditional time to implement? What's the sort of standard implementation approach there? So Tom, if I can push you just for a very, very quick couple of seconds answer on that before we move on.
I mean, obviously, the answer is it depends on how much customization you want. So you've got the installation of the HANA database and the streaming service, which could be around 2 weeks to a month. And then you've got your building of patterns. But like I say, if you want to use this straight out of the box with very little customization, it's essentially plug and play.
Fantastic. Now, we have got a number of questions that are still sat there on the webinar. Unfortunately, we're coming right up against the end point on the webinar. So we will certainly get back to you guys offline with the answers to those questions if we're able to provide them. But just wanted to do a quick little push on the additional cybersecurity webinar that we've got, where Richard Hunt, the Managing Director of Turnkey, is presenting our view on what the cybersecurity threat may be and what to do about it. So with that in mind, I would like to say thank you once more to Tom Smith and Paul Lloyd-Smith from Turnkey and SAP respectively, and wish you all a very good day. If there are any specific follow-ups that you want to do, please feel free to get in touch. The details are on the slide that Tom's showing there, so feel free to reach out to me. We will also take a log of all of the questions asked and try to summarize those into either a one-to-one response or some sort of, I suppose, abridged blog or FAQ on our website. So please stay tuned, and thank you very, very much once again, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.